North Korea testing a new intercontinental ballistic missile this week, one reportedly capable of hitting all of the continental United States. The launch was the first since September and came despite repeated warnings from President Donald Trump, who told reporters at the White House Tuesday that the U.S. will handle the situation. The heightened tension with Pyongyang comes amid reports this week that Secretary of State Rex Tillerson could exit the administration as early as January. Earlier, I spoke with Anthony Ruggiero. He's a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. So is there any doubt at all that this new missile that they tested, and they've shown some photos of it since the launch, can reach the United States?
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, North Korea has been working on this ballistic missile program, at least a long-range program, since 1998. And so, this is just another step in that process. It certainly looks like the missile. It's larger than ones we've seen before. It looks like that it can reach the United States. The question is whether the re-entry vehicle, which would have the nuclear weapon in it, could survive re-entry. I think they'd probably do more tests to ensure that that would happen.
And they also have to miniaturize the warhead and make sure that as well. But is there any doubt in your mind that they'll eventually get there, given the pace of their progress?
No, there's no doubt. I mean, I think the other thing to keep in mind is that North Korea showed us other ballistic missiles in their April parade that are probably larger than this one. So they're continuing to work on this program.
Okay. Now, Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State, called for more sanctions to come down on North Korea here. And do you think that that's the answer? Just really just press North Korea even more with sanctions and other kinds of pressure?
Right. There's a lot of people now who are suggesting that sanctions have not worked. The pressure campaign by the Trump administration has not worked. But we only had 10 months of it, really. I mean, 10 years of failed policies by Republican and Democratic administrations, and now we're only willing to give 10 months worth of robust sanctions. I mean, look at the other options. Diplomacy. North Korea doesn't want to talk to us. So what exactly are we going to talk about? A military option, comes with several disadvantages. So I think we have to, look at the options, clear-eyed, and sanctions is the best one now to give us whatever leverage we can attain with North Korea.
So it sounds like you would agree with those who have said, while we have had sanctions on North Korea, they haven't been the same kind of sanctions, really severe sanctions that were against Iran, for example. And we haven't also really put a lot of pressure on China and Chinese firms, companies that trade and do business with North Korea. Would you agree with that?
That's right. I mean, we are nowhere near the types of sanctions we put on Iran. I worked on both of those programs in the government, Iran sanctions and North Korea sanctions. And some of the things that these Chinese banks are doing to aid North Korea's sanctions evasion, they would have been punished very severely through the Iran sanctions program. So until we get to that point, I think the Trump administration has gone the furthest of any presidential administration to target China and to go after its nationals and its companies. They've held back from going after additional banks, and they actually have held back, on some of the sanctions issues that they put forward. So they need to really unleash the power of the Treasury Department to go after both Pyongyang and Beijing.
But I guess the response to that would be, well, wait a minute. If we go after Chinese companies like that, then we're going to lose the cooperation of the Chinese that they're promising. I guess you have to make a judgment about when the Chinese are leading you on, just stringing you along, like some people think they have been for years, and when you might get actual cooperation.
I mean, the Chinese have been leading us on for over a decade. Yeah. I mean, I think at some point we have to, smarten up and realize that the Chinese are always going to nibble around the edges, and they'll make a big deal about, closing this bridge or, targeting these North Koreans. They will never go after their own nationals unless they're forced to do so. And the United States is the only one with the authority to force them to do that.
What about on the defense side of things? Some people have suggested, including us, redeploying tactical nuclear weapons to the peninsula in the south, not because we'd want to use them, but just as a demonstration of seriousness and saying, look, you do anything here to us, North Korea, and this is the kind of response you'll get. Deterrence, in other words.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could do that. I'm not sure that it really augments deterrence that much. The North Koreans understand that we have, the nuclear triad that can, launch a nuclear weapon against North Korea. I think the disadvantages of doing that, where it would feed into North Korea's propaganda, are probably outweigh the benefits of doing that. I think that, at this point, we have to stay away from symbolic moves and move toward, harsh sanctions. And increasing our military exercises would be one way to do that, especially in the interdiction phase, where we would talk about how we're going to interdict North Korean vessels, missile defense, other things like that. I think would be more practical on the defense side and not as symbolic.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Anthony Ruggiero. Good to have you here.
Thank you.